What's up everybody, welcome back to the channel. Today going to Roosevelt Lake with my dad. We're going to do some drop shotting, teach him how to throw a drop shot and rig a drop shot up and catch some fish. So just kind of wanted to go over my setup really quick and how I tie my leader knots and how I tie the hook on and what weights I use and all that stuff. So really quick, I'll just show you my setup here. This is my main drop shot rod. This is a 7-foot St. Croix spinning rod, and it's a medium light fast action. This is one of my favorite rods. I've had a few different drop shot rods, and this is definitely by far one of my favorite. The reel is a Tatula LT. So it's a very light, it's one of the lightest spinning reels they have. With the drop shot setup, it's always good to have the least amount of weight. That's probably one thing I'd spend more on the rod, to get a nice sensitive rod and a nice reel for it so you can really feel what you're hitting on the bottom and feel when that fish bites. So I like the 7-foot because you can cast a little further with it. I got 10-pound braid on here, and we're gonna use 6-pound leaders. I kind of switch it up depending on the cover I'm in. If I'm fishing some really hard stuff and brush all around, I might go to higher pound leader. But for what we're going to be fishing today, we're just going to do a 6-pound leader. And we're not really going after any giants, just trying to get them to catch some fish. So let me show you how I set up my leader here. So I'm going to run this braid through the eyelets. So I got my 10-pound braid main line. I'm going to take my 6-pound test here. I use this FC Sniper 6-pound test. I've been using that a lot for any drop shot leaders. It's really strong. This 6-pound test is one of the strongest 6-pound tests I've seen. And it's just so light looking, so it's probably invisible underwater, and it's really strong for 6-pound. So I'm going to take my braid main line, and I'm going to do a blood knot to connect the leader. I'm going to try and get as close as I can so you can see this. Hopefully you can see it pretty good. It's going to be hard because this is really light line. But to do a blood knot, you're just going to cross those in an X like that, pinch your finger. And since this is light line, I'm going to wrap this around 6 times. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I'll pinch that with my finger. I'm going to spread this apart here, take that line I just wrapped, bring it between the X, and then I'm going to wrap the braid around 6 times on the other side. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then I'm going to take that and put it right through the loop we created, like so. And then I'm basically just going to pull that tight, get it a little wet, pull it nice and tight. Just like so. Make sure it's nice and tight so it's not slipping on you. I don't know how well you're going to see this on camera, but there's tons of videos on how to tie a blood knot. So if you can't see it that well and you want to learn how to do it, maybe check one of those other videos out that they've done a pretty good job on it. And then you're just going to get yourself a nice pair of braid scissors, because braid's kind of hard to cut. You're going to cut those tag ends off, And that blood knot is a very small knot. This is obviously light line, but I tie the blood knot on all my leaders. Even if I'm using up to 17, 20-pound test, I'm gonna tie that blood knot. You can see it's a very small knot. And I'm gonna, on my drop shot setup, I like my leader, I like to have a long leader, so I'm gonna bring my knot all the way about here. I don't want it to get wrapped up in my spinning reel, but I want it pretty long, so I'm gonna have that knot probably about right here in between the reel and this first eyelet here. I just like to have a long leader so that way you're not always tying on a new leader and you got enough to where if you have to cut off and retie. Okay, so tied our blood knot. Now it's time to tie on the hook and the weight. So, what I normally use if I'm going to nose hook a worm, which that's what we're going to do, I'm going to use I'm pretty sure that's a number 2 Gamakatsu drop shot split shot hook, really small, just enough to nose hook a worm. So you're going to take that hook right side up like that. That's important. You have to have this hook up, right side up and sticking straight up. So I'm going to take my line, put it through the hook, and then I'm going to tie a normal polymer knot on this hook. So I ran the line through the hook, now I'm going to run it back the other way. And depending on how long you want your leader, we're going to start out with about a foot between the hook and the weight. And you might have to adjust that depending on where the fish are, if they're, you know, low in the water column or, you know, suspended a little bit. So I just got the line looped in through the hook. Now I'm going to take that, tie a basic overhand knot like that. Then I'm going to bring that loop, bring the hook through the loop, and then get it a little wet. Tighten that up, tighten both ends, nice and tight. And then I'm going to take this end where my weight's going to go and I'm going to put it back through that loop. That helps the hook stick straight out. So without doing that, that hook might be a little limp and kind of dangling, and you don't want that. So now that I got that all set up, I'm going to kind of tighten that a bit. Now you can see my hook, when that weight goes on, it's going to be sticking straight out like that, and that's how you want that to, once that weight hits the bottom, you want that hook to dangle just like that, straight up and down, so that way when fish eats the worm, that hook's going to go right in the roof of his mouth. So for the weight, I like to use tungsten. You could feel a lot better on, you know, feel if you're hitting a rock or whatever you might be hitting, then you can kind of sit on that rock for a little bit. So I'm using tungsten. These are the Lunker City tungsten weights, and this is a 1/8 ounce. I like to go with the lightest weight I possibly can, depending on what I'm fishing, but I like to go with the lightest possible. That way, when you're casting, you know, when you're casting that drop shot, it's not making a lot of noise when it hits. It's just, you know, enough noise to kind of catch that fish's attention and they know something's there, and then let it hit the ground. And I'm not using a lot of action. I'm just dragging it, because a lot of times, I'll get to that, most of the time I'm using a curly tail robo worm with my drop shot. And since I'm using tungsten, you don't have to tie a knot. You could just slide it right through. But since I'm using tungsten weights and I don't want to lose a bunch of them, they're pretty expensive, I'm going to tie a knot just to kind of secure that. I'm just going to tie 2 overhand knots on that weight. That way it gives me a better chance of not losing it. You don't have to cut this tag line off, whatever's left over. I do. I like to make it, you know, a little bit shorter than that, have just a little tiny tag line. So that's the setup right there. You got your small little weight at the bottom, you got your hook sticking straight out like that, and then depending on the worm you use, I like to use these robo worms, the curly tails. Depends on the time of the year and what kind of, you know, how the fish are, what action they want. But the cool thing about these robo worms, This is a 4.5. Sometimes I use the 5.5. It just depends. This is the prism shad color, so it's a really natural looking color for clear water. And I'm going to take that curly tail worm and I'm just going to nose hook it. So there's a bottom side, a salt side of that worm. I don't know how good you're going to see that, but there's like a flat bottom part. That's what's going to go through the hook. So you're just going to take a little piece of that end of the hook and go right through, just like that. Just a little nose hook. So when that thing's, you know, at the bottom, this worm's sitting out here like that, and the curly tail is going to give it all the action. So yeah, I just drag that slowly, and when you're dragging this through the water, that little curly tail is making all the action. So you don't have to sit there and shake your rod or put a lot of action to it. Sometimes, most of the time, I'm getting my bites when it's just sitting still. You know, if the fish are really active, you might want to bounce it around, but for the most part, just dragging these curly tails is good enough. So just want to show you a little bit about that. That's how I set up my drop shot. And yeah, let's head out to Roosevelt Lake and teach my dad how to throw this drop shot around and get him to catch some fish. If this is, you know, if you're looking for a big fish video, this isn't going to be the one. We're just throwing drop shots around, you know, the islands out there. We're trying to stay away from all the brushy stuff, so we're not getting hung up a lot. We're just going to kind of hit the islands, hit some of the sandy, rocky areas, and muddy, rocky areas. And try not to get stuck that much, and hopefully stick a few fish. So thanks for watching these videos, guys. If you have any questions or anything, leave me a comment. Hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. Hit the like button if you like the video. And yeah, let's see what we do. Thanks for watching.
And those are not lead weights or titanium?
Yeah, those are tungsten weights, so you really feel, you can feel the rocks and all the stuff you're kind of getting bouncing over. So if you're like feeling that, like where you're at right now, I think is like all rock. So when you kind of feel you're going over a rock, that's kind of, you want to maybe give it a second. There's another one. You gotta let it sit there. They're little ones though, but you gotta, a lot of people will sit there and they'll shake their rod and they'll like do all this action to the worm. Well, they're not, like that worm has a curly tail, so you have to keep that line tight and just let it sit there and just drag it slow. If you move it too fast, they're not going to eat it. You kind of have to stay in that strike zone. They're up there kind of shallow too. So cast it up there pretty close to that island. That's good. And then now just pull it, keep your rod up, you know, pull it, yeah, just like that. Again, just keep that line tight, but don't reel it in, don't do anything. Just let it sit there for a second and then see if you feel a bite. If you don't, drag it a little bit, let it sit there. But I think that's like the most people that have problems with that. They're giving that worm too much action, or they're moving it too fast away from the fish. Yeah, it's working. Yeah, maybe. I don't know. You got some electrical tape around there. I don't know if it's... These damn waves. There we go. little dinker. Cast over on this side over here. There's probably a couple fish over there. Right at that rock. See that rock point? Yeah. That one feels, oh man, they're all little. See, right at the end of that point though. Oh, look at all of them following that one.
Really?
There's some big ones in there. Throw your worm down there. They'll eat it. They're trying to get what's in his mouth. Bring it over here and drop it down. They're all right below the boat right there. Look at them all. Man, there's a bunch of them down there. There's like 8. Oh, that's a big one right there. You got it down there? One of those was pretty big. Try and aim like, see, you could, I don't know how good your sunglasses are, but you can see the, like the shaded area where that rock point comes off the thing? Like here, I'll try and, so like right where I cast is like the end of that point. If you could get it anywhere near there, I'll get closer. But they're probably feeding off of that point. And then a lot of them did go. There's another one. I'll get closer to that point. Wait till you see this one come up and see if you see any others with them, because they're probably gonna do the same. Yeah.
What the hell, man?
I don't see any other ones with them. I'll get closer to that point. Dude, your trolling motor is like... Oh, okay, there it goes. Yeah, there's another one too. All little ones, but... I'm wondering, I might put on a bigger worm. Because there is some bigger ones. I think maybe these little ones are eating it faster. Yeah, they're still there.
Got another one?
Yeah, I think they're all, it's like a little wolf pack over there just on that point. See, look at them all. There's like 6 of them following that one now. See them all? They're all off that point. A bunch of little ones, but I don't know, I threw that bigger worm there quite a few times and they didn't want anything to do with it.
Well, you catch 10 fish and then catch the damn thing.
Yeah, throw it in there.
What are you talking about, right over here?
So, I don't know how much you could see with those sunglasses on, but I mean, with mine, I could see a big point of rocks come out to about here. That whole point is where they're at. I've been tossing it up somewhat shallow, you know, and dragging it right across that point. That's a good color. They'd probably eat that.
Talk about right here.
You don't really have to go. There's another one. You put that other color worm back on. I'm sure they'd eat that color worm that you have, but you know, it's clear water, so you want to go like as natural as possible. They seem to like this color.
Purple.
It's that same color you had out. Yeah, it's prism shad or something is the name of the color, but it's such a clear, like translucent worm that it's just like a natural color. So is yours though. That looked like, what was that, like a dark green or something? Yeah, so they should eat that too. You just got to make that right cast, because they're all, you know, like I'll cast it, that's even a little further than what I've been casting, but and then just dragging it across that point, because that's where they're all feeding up. Got one? Hey. Keep it tight. Got another, like 3 more following it. First fish on the boat. That's the first fish on this new boat, huh? Jeez. Show us what you got. Let me take a picture. Send it to Mom. Hold on, let me take a picture. Huh. Did you unhook him already? Yep.
It's a sad day when they came up with them years ago. They never had that shit.
Yeah. Those are the old ones. Those are like the stand-up ones. Oh. Those little things fight though. Yeah, they're all just cookie cutters. I think they're still on there. Oh, I just missed a bite right there. They're still in this area. I saw, last time I reeled my worm in, I saw a few of them come in and follow it. That felt like a good bite that I had about right where you cast it too. It's probably a little one, but yeah. That was my fish. Might be the smallest one yet today. It's, this year's young. Yeah, usually I'll start with the foot. See where that goes. Yeah, that one was deep and it's still a little tiny one. Actually, it feels a little bit better. It's a little one. Jesus. That might have been the smallest one of the day. I don't know.
Alright guys, so that's the end of the video. You know, like I said in the beginning, we're going out there to throw some drop shots around. We did try some other stuff, some swim baits, crankbaits, stuff like that. The fish actually weren't eating that well. They were pretty tough to catch actually. We found pretty good school little fish on these islands and just kind of whacked them. You know, they were just little bass, but it was a fun time. Got my dad out there, got him to catch some fish, taught him how to drop shot. So hopefully you guys learned a little bit from this video. If you haven't learned how to drop shot yet, or if you're wondering kind of how to set it up, that's a good way, you know, for a beginner to drop shot with just nose rigging it like that, and the curly tail robo worm, because you don't really have to put a lot of action into it, and it's basically just throwing it out there, letting it sit, dragging it here and there, and wait until you feel a bite. So pretty easy way to set up a drop shot rig. And you know, when all you're really waiting to feel is, you might feel like, if it's a smaller fish, you might feel like tick, 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 you know, on the end of your rod. And then you don't even have to set that hook hard with those little hooks. Just pull up on it. And once they're hooked, you just keep that tension on and you're good to go. So, but yeah, the robo worm, curly tail, especially right now, this time of the year, the fish are pretty active. So you can get by with that robo worm and just barely do anything with it, drag it around and wait till you get a bite. So the bigger fish, sometimes it'll just feel heavy and you just lift up. Still, you don't have to set that hook hard. If you're using that 6-pound test, just get your drag set right. So if they start surging, you know, your drag will take care of the rest. So again, hopefully you guys learned something from this video. And again, leave me a comment, hit that like button, hit the subscribe button. Thanks for watching.